For the Freight Fraud Task Force, it's time for the Task Force Minute with your host, the double broker bounty hunter, John Cantera. Man, I forgot to sit there and take that intro out of the automated thing. That's okay. Actually, we're here for the Tic Doc Diner, but since we do have the Task Force Minute intro start up, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about it real quick, folks. Today's Task Force Minute is about comments that brokers are putting onto the load boards when they are posting their loads. Brokers, we are seeing a huge amount of fraud come across when you put load identifier numbers or release numbers into your comments. Do yourself a little bit of favor and protect yourselves with operational security. Don't put load identifying information in the comments. It makes it very easy for someone to just swing by, look at your comment, and then go and pick up your load without you ever knowing about it. And trust me, I can tell you it happens every freaking day. I'm dealing with a case on it right now, but that's neither here nor there. That is your Task Force Minute. For the Freight Fraud Task Force, this has been another Task Force Minute. Please be sure to like and subscribe on all of our social media. Until next time, don't let scammers take you for a ride. Well, I hope you've had the opportunity to have a seat and get yourself a menu, because Jeff and I are going to be serving up some freight fraud with a side of prevention today. And boy, let me tell you something, the MREs are going to be flying. We are going to be talking about DOD or DOW now, I think it is. Department of War freight. And guys, if you've ever moved military freight, there's a lot to it. And you'd think DOD would be the best in the business when it comes to moving freight. We're finding out very quickly that is in fact not the case. Our guest, Justin Martin, is here to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on in that regard. And was it Shady Logistics, Shady Trans?
Shady Freight.
What's your new company? Shady Freight. That's what it is.
Shady Freight is what we're going with.
Shady Freight. He's out here trying to help expose the bad stuff that's going on across the industry. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. Yeah, Shady Freight initially started off as like a idea for a podcast I had with me, Danielle, and some other friends. And as we were digging into topics to talk about during episodes, it got real scary, and we're like, do we really want to talk about these guys publicly, like with our names and faces? And so the running joke is now we're never going to get this podcast off the ground because we just keep finding more stuff. But everything that we find that we're not talking about publicly, we just pass on to the authorities, and hopefully they do something about it.
Well, it would certainly be nice if they were able to do something about it. It did not help when Doge went through FMCSA's special investigations team and slashed it to shreds. And it is only a skeleton of what it was a year ago. So they're working on building that back up. I know I've got 3 or 4 investigations sitting with them that are on hold because of that. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead over to the Pharaoh of Freight, who engineered how to get those big stone blocks up the side of the pyramid. Jeff Dickinson, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing well, John. Great to have you on the show today, Justin. I know we're going to be talking about government freight. I've never moved it for a couple of reasons, but I really want to get into, what you're seeing, the problems that they're facing, what the government's not doing that they should be doing, because I've heard a lot of stories about that. So let's just dive right into it, because we got a lot to talk about today.
Okay. Yeah, I like what you said about the. Sorry for jumping in. So I like what you said about the Doge cuts, because I've been saying for years, the greatest trick the supply chain ever pulled was convincing people it doesn't exist. And for people outside of freight that are in the government that are responsible for having stuff moved around, I think they've been kind of operating under the old set of rules that have worked for decades and decades. And what they don't realize is over the last 10, 15-ish years, bad guys have kind of gotten really good at worming their way into networks, keeping a low profile, and then just completely taking over everything.
I think that's how we've gotten to where we are today as an industry overall. I mean, the Eastern Europeans are dominating back office support for legitimate and illegitimate carriers and brokers combined. You know, I remember back when freight guards started popping up about overseas dispatch services, but I've seen those same brokers utilizing those same overseas services for carrier sales.
Yeah.
So
it gets murky because
crazy.
It gets murky because when you look at carriers, it's hard to determine like who's a legitimate operator and who's, you know, a foreign gangster linked, you know, crime syndicate, because all of these back office support people that they're using, they service everybody, the good guys, bad guys, everybody out there. So you got to go through carrier by carrier, line by line, who's connected to who knows what, who's bragging about their operations on social media, and start linking those things together.
It's kind of crazy. You know, back when I was dispatching, my phone was constantly ringing for people who needed support. And being by myself, I wasn't able to provide additional support. I was full. But they had no choice but to turn to some of these outside, these international dispatchers. And it's just played havoc with this entire industry. But it's now commonplace. And that's part of the problem. And it's something that Secretary Duffy and Administrator Bars are trying to change. Let's see what they come up with in trying to make that happen. But first, let's deal with the domestic stuff there over at DoD. Why don't you break down for us what the DoD supply chain looks like, how it's supposed to work, and what's really happening?
Yeah, so a little background on myself. I was a company driver for a DoD contractor from 2010 to 2014 called Green Valley Transportation, and they are an arms, ammunitions, and explosive hauler. That's all they haul. 1.1 to 1.4 parts, classified documents, etc. Any kind of like high sensitive, high security military freight. That's what they specialize in. And I had a great time working with them. But like any carrier in that space, they have a hell of a time recruiting drivers because it is all team. There are no solo jobs there. So most of your A+ drivers that are going to be working for you are recently retired husband and wife military couples. When I joined them, I was driving for this dad of a guy that I went to high school with, and we drove together for 2 years. He left, and I brought my dad on, and it was awesome. My dad's retired Air Force. Getting on and off bases was a piece of cake because he still had his military ID, and it was basically camping with my dad for 2 years and getting paid for it. So we had a good time doing that. But I got to learn, you know, how stuff is moved around, and at the time, you know, people take their jobs very seriously. Everybody there was super professional. Every base you go to, you might have a couple knuckleheads here and there. But as far as I was concerned, as far as the freight and all that, everybody takes their jobs and the security of what they're shipping very, very seriously. And over time, the last probably 5 years or so, I started hearing rumors from people saying that they were seeing guys on bases that were kind of sketchy, and you know, loads were being brokered, which is like a huge no-no. And I didn't want to believe it because I'm like, who would be stupid enough to do this? Because if you get caught, you're looking at serious jail time. But then a couple guys came forward to me with a bunch of receipts for stuff, and I was like, okay, I can't ignore this stuff anymore. This is just a gigantic pile of evidence. And they had given us this presentation at US Transcom back in 2024, and they showed everything that was going on, and all the leadership there went, okay, what do you want us to do about it? And nothing happened. So they got kind of fed up with being stonewalled. And what we've kind of noticed and had success with, especially on social media, is you could ignore one person or like a couple people coming to you with problems. You cannot ignore millions of people freaking out on social media once a problem becomes public. And that's kind of what myself and Danielle and others have kind of stepped into this situation to do is, okay, if leadership isn't going to be listening to them, we're just going to start blasting this stuff in public and making you guys all look like idiots. And hopefully people lose their jobs, careers get evaporated, and this stuff gets fixed.
That's it's insane. Being a former Air Force officer myself in logistics, I know there are very tight rules in the traffic management office about how freight was released and how it was moved as we were pushing stuff from one base to another. And it was a very detail-oriented process. Now, granted, that was, almost 20 years ago since I got out. What happened?
I think just like any other organization, you have a bit of a brain drain problem where people who know the rules and what to look for retire, and the people that replace them just kind of, are kind of laissez-faire about a lot of stuff. There might be a little bit of that. I mean, really, it would take somebody with an investigative law enforcement background to go through, audit everything, interview people who work at the bases, and really get to the bottom of this. I don't know the motivations or the reasons why this stuff is happening. All I can see is that we have a list of carriers that are authorized to haul DoD freight, and the number of trucks that they have registered to DOT, and the number of trucks we can verify on vision platforms like Genlogs. So you'll have a carrier with one pickup truck. It's a hotshot guy, and he's booking 20 loads a day out of a single Air Force base. And you're like, okay, this guy has nowhere near the number of trucks to get this stuff. Oh, but when you look at other associated entities with this person registered to this DOT carrier, he has a freight brokerage too. So you immediately understand what's going on. He's booking all these loads, rebrokering them out to other carriers, and because the rates that these DoD load or DOW loads pay is so high, they're able to take all these loads, rebroker them, take a little bit off the top, and just make a killing. So there's rebrokering, and then there's also when you start going down the list of authorized carriers, when you look at the people that the companies are registered to, a lot of them aren't even here in the U.S. We have guys in Moldova. There's a guy in not Uganda. Some other African country. So there's all kinds of like foreign actors that own trucking companies that are hauling DoD freight. This stuff should just never happen.
So, Justin, do you think that the military is leaning more on technology and not having that human element as far as, that manual touch point that we're lacking today in logistics on our side of the fence? That they lean too much on technology and not enough on common sense and due diligence and digging into their background and their authority and who's behind it and so forth and so on. And they're just saying, you know what, if it's in our system, then it must be good, and they just let it fly.
Yeah, it's not so much a technology problem because, anyone that deals with commercial freight, you're constantly looking out for these kind of guys all the time. Mm-hmm. And you know what? So after I hauled military freight, I worked at the post office, and we had this joke in the post office called government thinking, and it's that kind of attitude of like, well, this person is an authorized carrier, he's on the list, so he must be a trustworthy person. Yeah. Versus if I'm working commercial freight and I'm trying to get carriers to haul oranges or something, I'm vetting every single one of these guys because I don't care whose list they're on. I got to make sure that these guys aren't lying to me or lying to someone else, because if that load disappears, I'm eating the cost of that. Versus if I'm in the government, I'm not paying the cost for stuff going missing or being a day or two late or being consolidated on another shipment. There's all kinds of different ways that these loads can go wrong. And even before we were given like this giant pile of evidence, we were seeing weird stuff with DOT inspections. If you go through platforms like Search Carriers, it scrolls the inspection database every single day. You can look up violations that are handed out to carriers all day long, and you can sort by shippers as well. So we'll have a carrier that gets pulled over for inspection, gets placed out of service because the driver can't speak English, and on that inspection report, it'll have U.S. Army as the shipper. So we're like, what the hell? And I don't care what these guys are hauling. They could be hauling soda cans to the mess hall on base, but just the fact that those guys are getting on base, whatever freight they're hauling, it doesn't matter. It could be retail stuff, could be pots and pans for all I care, but just the fact that they're getting on base should not be happening. Period. End of discussion. Everybody freaking out about guys from China snatching up farmland all over U.S. military bases. They don't even do that. If we were talking earlier, like, don't give out too many trade secrets to these bad guys, but
right.
If I was a Chinese bad actor, I wouldn't be buying up land. I would be starting up trucking companies and getting my guys on base with iPhones and just take pictures of everything.
Think like a thief. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that lack of imagination and outside the box thinking is unfortunately very, very common inside military logistics.
So right now, the biggest thing we're seeing is that we have unvetted carriers getting these government contracts. Turns out they have their own brokerages. Then they broker the stuff out to people who have no business ever being on a military base, and that's where things start disappearing.
Yeah, well, here's where I kind of like have to put the pod. Like, it is, you can go down these like insane conspiracy theory rabbit holes. I think, at least for the time being, we are lucky that these guys aren't stupid enough to mess with the freight. They just want to haul it because it's easy freight and it pays well. But the problems start piling up when, if I broker a load, if I rebroker a military load to a carrier that I haven't vetted, I don't know what ELD service these guys are using. I don't know the background of the driver, and I don't know if that driver can even get on base. So a fun little rabbit hole you can go down is on Facebook groups, search for getting on base and just look up every single public post over the last couple of years, and you'll see post after post after post of guys saying, hey, I got a driver that needs to get onto a military base X, Y, and Z. Security forces isn't letting him in. Do you have someone that you can send over that can get the load on base? Like, no, you need to go to jail. Your driver needs to go to jail, and everybody else involved needs to be completely cut out of the U.S. supply chain for life.
Absolutely.
Well, okay. I certainly appreciate what you're saying there, but I also know, having been a carrier myself, I had one of my drivers in a box truck. He was 65 years old. He was going on to Dover Air Force Base to make a delivery. He got stopped at the gate, wasn't allowed through because when he was 15, 50 years prior, he had a possession charge as a youth, which actually got expunged, but still shows up in the federal registers. So he wasn't allowed on the base. I ended up flying from Georgia to Delaware to take the load onto the base. So there was no subterfuge or anything involved in it, and then he had no felonies, and he was a U.S. citizen, and there was no way that any background check that I've done would ever have picked that up. So
yeah, to be clear, I'm saying for unauthorized carriers. Obviously, these kinds of things happen all the time. I watch trucks in front of me at military bases where the driver is divorced from his wife, and because he's out on the road, he might have missed a child support payment one time, and poof, handcuffs are slapped on him. That stuff happens. Oh, yeah. I'm not trying to go after authorized carriers. I'm trying to go after guys who are rebrokering these loads to unauthorized carriers who should know better not to touch this stuff and try to play tricky games like they would do with the commercial freight.
Fair enough. I just had to represent for a second there. Sorry. DoD procedures are crazy as it is. I know, and I knew when I was on the load boards, I knew when I was looking at a DoD load, because the first thing in the comments must be U.S. citizen, clean background. Yeah. So at least these guys who book these loads as carriers and then turn it over to their brokerages to co-broker it, rebroker it, double broker it, whatever you want to call it. They at least have enough sense to make sure that they're asking some of the right questions. But to your point, they're not vetted. They're not vetted in the military's way, and that is where the big problem exists. Is there any potential fix that may exist that's being talked about over at SDDC?
None. So the same guys who came to us with all this stuff, they've given other presentations, they've talked to other people, and again, it gets back to that government thinking where once you present them problems, it's this stuff is so like abstract to them that they have a hard, because they're not from the freight world and have a freight background, they have a military background or a government background. They don't really get like the full scope of the problem of what they're dealing with. People I've talked to inside the administration now about this stuff, they're very interested in going after people committing this fraud. They're all about the fraud. Fraud is all in the zeitgeist right now, and they're very enthusiastic about going after the fraud. The challenge that I have trying to explain to them, like, it's bigger than fraud. This is like, we're talking national security type issues where if you have people that you don't know who they are, their backgrounds, what kind of camera systems they have on their trucks, what kind of ELD system that they're using, all that information is being sent overseas. And the fact that we pulled off the whole Venezuela mission was like an absolute miracle, because I don't think anybody was really looking at military freight at the time. I guarantee you they're looking at it now. So if I'm a data broker overseas and I have access to every single truck moving across the country, if I notice a sudden surge, like, people on Twitter like to joke around about this, all the pizza restaurants around the Pentagon. Every time there's a spike in activity at the pizza places in the Pentagon, they know that there's something big going on. And that's just people having a laugh at it, but it actually is serious. And if you're tapped into the right data streams and you're able to watch activity moving around, you know about stuff happening before the missions are even kicked off, because everything has to be put in place first and then the missions start. So that's the part on the challenge I'm having with right now with people in the administration, where they love going after the fraud, they love the idea of that, but I'm still like freaking out, like no, there's other stuff. And because they don't have the same background as us, they don't really see it in the same eyes that we do.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. To your point, Justin, I was laughing. I think it was last year or the year before, where they said, you know what, we're going to bring in all these supply chain people every quarter, and we'll be able to figure this out. No, logistics is a 24/7, 365 job. You have to be in that seat to get a pulse of what is happening out there. You can't get together every quarter and think you're going to solve the problems of the economy and the logistics and supply chain problems. It ain't going to happen. You've got to have people like us who have been in the trenches, that understand that from many different segments of the industry, to go there to help them out, to figure it out. But they're not going to do it on their own. But you see that all the time.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened with the Biden trucking action plan. When COVID was first popping off and we had this insane capacity crunch, all the mega carriers were freaking out, because they're saying, hey, we got all these drivers that are, we're hiring them, and they're telling us, we're looking around, everyone's making a killing. If you don't give us a pay raise, we're quitting and going somewhere else. So they went to the federal government, hat in hand, as they always do, and said, you got to fix this. And to their credit, the Biden administration's first response was to bring in supply chain experts and say, what do we do here? And the advice they were given is like, hey, this is temporary. This is, we can already see everything's kind of plateauing right now. We're going to see a drop in volume. We're going to get through this. Yeah, you're going to have to pay more because everyone's making a killing right now.
Yeah.
But they can easily do that with sign-on bonuses, and maybe you got to pay a couple extra per mile. Instead, what they did was they went to guys at McKinsey, because Pete Buttigieg is from McKinsey, and that's the world that he knows. McKinsey says, we don't know anything about supply chain. Give us 3 weeks. So they spent 3 weeks studying everything that they could about trucking and the supply chain and stuff.
I'm not trying to laugh, but
it's crazy. And what happened was they got hooked up with the American Trucking Association, and the solution they cooked up was, well, we don't have enough drivers, so let's just make more drivers. And they more than doubled the amount of CDLs. So typically between 400 to 450,000 CDLs are issued per year, but from 2020 to 2021, 876,000 CDLs were issued.
And they just handed out those CDLs like candy. I mean,
yep.
Is that the origin of the driver shortage myth?
ATA, 100%. You can. It sounds almost like tinfoil hat conspiracy, but you can literally link just about every major problem in the trucking industry in the last 20, 30 years directly to the ATA, because they have from the get-go been complaining about a driver shortage when the real problem is retention. So every single driver that they hire at their members' companies quit within 6 months to a year, and rather than increase pay or fix scheduling or the lifestyle of the job, their solution was, we'll just go to the government, have them pay for an infinite supply of drivers to come in. And what do they think that was going to happen? It's going to suppress wages.
Yep.
Right.
and that just makes turnover even worse. So it used to be like I like to think. So I got into trucking in 2007, and I was kind of like the last hurrah of like that generation of like new people who could come in, stick it around for like a year or two, and then move on to greener pastures. Since then, that whole pipeline is completely broken down. Rather than get hired at a company, stick it out for a year or two, quit, go somewhere else better, most guys who come into the industry now, they just quit trucking, period. So it's not so much that they have a driver retention problem. There's like an entire truck driver career retention problem because and Gord, my friend Gord McGill talks about this all the time too. You know, back in the day, most of like the old school guys, they started the opposite. When they got into the industry, they were local. They worked on the trucks. They worked on the shops. They learned everything from the ground up. And then over time, as you got more experience, then you were entrusted to go on those long haul routes because the last thing you want as a company is to have a brand new guy stranded 800 miles from your shop, and now you got to go have somebody get out there and rescue him. It's much easier if that guy's 30 miles down the road and you can go rescue them. Right. But because the ATA has been so insistent on getting as many new people in the door as possible, that's where most people get their start now, is right there at the deep end in OTR freight. And that is the last place you want a brand new person.
Definitely all the way. I mean, you've got to earn your keep, and the only way that you learn that is trench work. You got to start up the bottom and work yourself up. You can't just say, I want to be that, and drop them in and say, here's the keys, here's your route, go. No, you can't do that.
And that's the ideal, and that's how I would like it to be going forward. But the problem is that there are over 500,000 trucking companies in the U.S., and everybody's undercutting everybody as relentlessly as possible. So the only company we've ever seen to try and change this was JB Hunt back in 1998 or 97. They increased all of their driver pay 33%, and it cut their turnover in half, and it doubled their safety rates. So hurrah, problem solved, right? No, they got absolutely crushed the following year when it came to rate negotiation contracts. They just got destroyed because they're paying their guys more. They had to charge more per mile for their customers, and the customers said, yeah, that's great and all everything, but these guys will do the same load for half the rate. So then the cycle continues. And I think that will absolutely continue going forward until the government and the public at large really understand that no, we do not have a truck driver shortage. Companies are going to have to learn how to hold on to the drivers that they have if they want to. Because I really think that the days of this like unlimited supply of fresh meat going into the grinder, that has to stop. You nip that in the bud, and so many downstream effects from that get changed for the better.
I think we're seeing indications of that, at least out of Administrator Bars. He's trying to shut down the bad CDL mills. He's going after the illegally issued non-domicile CDLs. They're trying to push hard on the ELP enforcement. That they're trying to do what government can do in that regard. Unfortunately, that's not much out on the highway. Really I think, especially when you get these guys with the CDLs that get taken away. They immediately turn right around, sell their rig, and go buy a Sprinter or a box truck.
Yeah. I think so. Unfortunately, relying on the government to fix this problem is going to be too slow. Like they'll be thorough. Don't get me wrong, but they're just too slow to really get it fixed like immediately. And I think where we've seen more success is companies stepping in and saying, like brokers saying, hey, you need to vet your driver. I'm not booking this with you if your driver doesn't speak English, if he's not a U.S. citizen, etc. Shippers now, we're seeing, signs posted in the warehouses. We will not load you if you have a non-domicile CDL. So it's companies getting together and having this agreement saying, okay, we recognize this problem. We're going to fix it. We're going to fix it ourselves until the government finally gets it fixed for us.
Well, the biggest problem, Justin, that they don't have the manpower at
That's
the
true too.
FMCSA to do that kind of stuff. If they did, imagine the impact that they would have. But they're so limited, and they're trying desperately. But that's when the Common John like us, we're in the trenches and everything, that are seeing more things than what the FMCSA and the DOT is seeing, and we're feeding that information, like like yourself, Justin, you know, and what you're doing and what you're exposing and stuff. And there's many of us that are out there. The thing is all that input that's going into the FMCSA, just so many hands are touching that material and trying to understand it and digest it, and then put it out there and make changes happen. And that takes months, if not years, to do.
But 100%. There was a report. It was a letter from FMCSA I was reading the other day. Let me pull it up here because it is just phenomenal how in depth this is. So this was a case from 2024. It was the United States Department of Transportation. It was a imminent hazard out of service order that they issued to this guy. It was called Monique Trucking. They had a driver hauling steel pipes in Colorado. The load came loose and crushed and killed a guy. And when the DOT stepped in and they audited this guy's company, it was like, oh my God, this guy should have never been in operation to begin with. They have like quotes in this. This letter is 15 pages long. They have quotes from previous interviews that they've done with him on other safety audits, and it's like, we asked you if you knew about the FMCSR rules. You said no. We asked you if you knew about safety programs. You said no. So this guy was just like completely ignorant of like every single rule in the book, did not vet his drivers, did not do anything, and he was already under a shutdown notice, and he still kept operating. So as incredibly detailed and amazing of an investigation that the FMCSA did on this guy, the most that they could do to him was just send strongly worded letters. It wasn't until his insurance company stepped in and canceled his policy that he ended up getting shut down. Like that is crazy. And I've talked to other people in other government departments, and what they've basically told me is like, look, DOT, FMCSA, they're just bureaucrats. They set up the rules and the regulations, and they rely on everybody else to actually have boots on the ground to enforcement. There is no SWAT team with big guys with big guns and badges that can go out and kick in doors at DOT or FMCSA. You have to rely on Department of Commerce, Department of Treasury, all these other federal departments. They have big scary guys with big guns that can go in and kick doors down. FMCSA does not have that. I'm not saying they need it, but they need something. They need something with teeth to be able to go after these guys. And until they get that, the best that they can hope to do is just send strongly worded letters.
Well, isn't that what Corca is supposedly all about?
I really hope. The problem with Corca is it in the way it's written right now, it is a temporary measure. We were talking earlier in a previous podcast, when you start getting evidence piled up for federal investigators to go after and you hand it to them on a silver platter, they look at it and they go, hey, this is a great case. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet our metric for, bioterrorism or serial killers or actual, murderers that we're trying to go after. We don't care, and we're not trying to be mean about it. We just don't have the manpower or the resources to go after somebody stealing $1.5 million worth of freight. Even if they're doing that every single day, year after year, and it adds up to billions of dollars, we're just not, that kind of stuff just isn't on our radar. Corca, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, was all the U.S. retailers getting together and saying, hey, this is a problem. We need you guys to fix it. Here's a bunch of money to your coffers. And now all of a sudden lawmakers are like, oh, yeah, we'll get on this. And I think it's a 7-year mission is what this thing's planned out to be. So they're going to set up some kind of task force where they can go after cargo thefts, fraudsters, etc. But then once that 7-year limit hits, the whole thing is just over. And I'm like, no. This needs to be a permanent department within FBI or some other Department of Commerce, you name it, where shippers, customers, everybody can go to and say, this person stole from us. Here's everything you need to know about them. Please do something about it. And then hopefully they can send somebody out there to start making arrests.
Unfortunately, if I recall correctly, it is setting up regional task forces through the FBI and then dispatching U.S. attorneys to the hardest hit areas So you might see U.S. attorneys popping up in Chicago, New York, Dallas, and L.A. To try to start dealing with this stuff. The only challenge is, and we've seen this stuff through Danielle Spinelli and some of the things that they've been doing with the California Highway Patrol. They'll catch the guys, they'll arrest them, they'll convict them. 12 months later, they're out of jail and they're doing it all over again.
Yep. Yeah. My hope is that at least now with, and this isn't going to be everybody, but we're seeing with a lot of these guys, most of them are not here in the country legally. And I think because this administration is so serious on combating illegal immigration, I think once a lot of these guys are in custody, and we've seen this now with like the ICE raids in Chicago. I had this sneaking suspicion that when they first announced the raids last fall, I was like, oh, there's going to be all kinds of trucking involved with this. And one of the first guys they caught was a illegal immigrant from I think Moldova, and he had a trucking company with like 16 trucks here in the U.S. So never mind drivers here in the country illegally. You have company owners here in the country illegally that are hiring drivers, which is just insane to me that's allowable.
Yeah, and a lot of them, they don't reinvest into their equipment. They push it to the furthest extent, and then, at the Broker Carrier Summit, Matt Lefter came up with this statistic on OOS, which was 21.6% of all trucks on the road were OOS. That means every day there's about 5 million trucks that are rolling out there. So 1 in 5 that you pass on the highway could literally take you out. I mean, when you think about that, right? And as a shipper, as a broker, I'm concerned of that. And I think that anybody else that's watching this show should also be concerned. The question that you should ask yourself is that, do you want to be part of a fatality or something? Because remember, when you tender freight, your brand image and reputation is in that truck. You are rolling in that truck. And if you aren't vetting your carriers properly and really digging into their background, the hell with the speed, put more on due diligence to protect your business and yourself and your reputation. Get these guys off the road. Don't give them the ability to kill somebody out there, because that's a high statistics when you're thinking 1 in 5. That's ridiculous. Yeah. And when you think we should actually increase the fines to these companies, don't slap them on the wrist or whatever. Go into the 6 and 7 figure. Get them off the road. That's what we have to really, really do. So the next broker or the shipper down the road doesn't have to face this as well. You've got to think forward. You can't stay where we are currently. You have to figure out, what are you going to do to stop this? And it's continuing. Yeah, I don't see any real effort unless you do. I don't. I don't think John does either. And that's where we have to focus on. We have to be laser focused as logisticians and professionals in this industry. How are we going to help to eliminate this type of fraud? That's the problem. The problem with relying on enforcement to go after these guys, so way stations, ICE officers, etc., they only operate during the day. They're working 9 to 5 office hours. So me as a former driver, I used to love driving at night. There's no traffic, roads are wide open, no problem. You drive today overnight, that's where all these shady carriers are operating, because all the way stations are closed. So if I'm a bad actor and I'm worried about getting pulled over by enforcement and getting shut down, I just move when they're closed. Right. Yep. And I think the government was I think it was DeSantis that was going to do that first. Correct me if I'm wrong. In Florida, that the way stations and all that were going to be turned into checkpoints where it wouldn't be a surprise inspection. It was going to happen on every truck that went to every way station in the state of Florida, and then they were going to expand that. And I didn't hear anything further from that, John or Justin. If you heard something, please chime in. But I think that would be, to your point, fantastic.
But again, if those way stations aren't running 24/7, they'll just wait till they're closed. They're gonna stop at the state line in Georgia at a rest stop, wait till the sun's down, hear on the radio, hey, way station's closed, start moving, and then just start flooding in.
Yeah, and they know it. I mean that.
Yeah.
But why don't they react to that? It just doesn't make any sense at all. It really doesn't. If you want to stop the bad guys, well, do what the bad guys are going to do to try to circumvent and get around those type of things, and be there when they least think that you're going to be there. That's the problem. That's
people aren't going to like it, but if I was ICE, I would be having random stops at every truck stop in the country, and just and the drivers might not. I mean, it depends on the driver. I'm sure the U.S. drivers are like, absolutely, here's my papers, sir, by all means. But we saw in Minnesota last month. We had ICE officers at rest stops and truck stops. Pulling guys out of the trucks. So these guys are everywhere. And unless you're going to where they are, you're never going to catch them.
Well, and another thing too, Justin, is that the shipper has the last point of contact when you think about that, right? Shippers start the whole process. They give you a shipment, and then it starts from there. Either it's going to go to an asset or a broker. Somebody's going to pick that load up, and then you get into the mandatory requirement from FMCSA CFR 49. 392.7 pre-trip inspection. So why don't they make that a mandatory? If it's mandatory, they bump on your dock, walk out there. What criminal is going to want to walk around their truck and check and do an inspection, right? So you can catch them off guard if they know that, or ask them their name when they bump the door. If you know and you talk to the dispatcher and says, yes, the driver's John Smith. John's going to be banging your door or whatever. So you go up to the driver and you go, hey, Tim, how you doing? Oh, my name's not Tim, it's John. You got to ask these stupid questions to catch these guys, and that's where it starts. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of learning processes and logistics operations from a shipper's point of view. Brokers and a lot of carriers out there, they bang doors. They've never been in warehouses or distribution centers. They just roll and go. But with the more that you have a better perception of what actually happens and the types of questions you should be asking them to stop this kind of criminal activity.
There actually was a video the other day of ICE officers inside of an Amazon warehouse, but they were going after the warehouse workers.
Oh yeah,
and I'm sure there's maybe a handful here and there.
Justin, they did that in Edison. They did that in Edison.
So Donald Trump is by no means a fan of Jeff Bezos, and the man is famously vindictive. And if I was Trump and I really wanted to stick it to Jeff Bezos, I would just have an ICE officer or two at every single Amazon distribution center in the country, park outside the gate, and just stop every single truck coming in. Say, hey, can I see your papers, please? And Amazon will fix that tomorrow.
That would be true.
I think part of the problem of why this stuff hasn't been fixed as quickly as people are hoping is that there isn't enough enforcement out there, and where it is happening, it's not as effective as it could be. And there are very smart, strategic places where you could place ICE officers around the country and find these drivers. Don't wait for them at truck stops. Don't wait for them at way stations. They're going to get around the way stations. Go to where they need to pick up or where they need to deliver. And actually, honestly, what I would be doing is don't go to where they're picking up. Go to where they're dropping off. Because if you snatch them before that load's picked up, whatever, they just hire another right. Carrier to pick up that load. Get that load while it's in transit and hold that crate hostage. This stuff gets fixed immediately.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I have a friend that's a state trooper, and he's a helicopter pilot, and they're frustrated too. They want to do the right thing. They want to get bad guys off the road, but they can't do it themselves. They just need that support and that help from a government level, and it's just not there. And to your point, you want to solve the problem, you got to get more people on board, more people out there, to the truck stops, to the way stations, to these big, huge industrial parks, and stop them in their tracks. Really.
Here's the two places you can do the most damage: Amazon warehouses, or where they're being delivered to, and auto auctions. those are like the two main. When you look through the DOT database at every single driver that gets an ELP violation, those are your two big. Oh, and post offices. Those are the three big ones.
Don't forget, we got plenty of them in the state of New Jersey, Justin, Prologix warehouses.
Yep, they're everywhere. I love going down conspiracy theory TikTok videos where people are freaking out because they're seeing warehouses being popped up all over the place, but they're assuming that these are like data centers, and it's like no. If these are data centers, there would be like a lot more stuff involved. Right. What they don't realize is, okay, you see a big warehouse right there. Take Google Maps, zoom out. Lo and behold, half a mile down the road is an Amazon distribution center. So it's all these sub warehouses being popped up to feed more inputs and outputs into that Amazon fulfillment center.
Well, I'll tell you what. Last year, was it last year or 23? The world's largest warehouser was Prologix at 964 million square feet. Yeah. I think that's more. It is. They're like the number one warehousing out there. So when you look at the laborers and all that kind of stuff, and I mean, you got to outsmart the crooks, man, and the fraudulent actors. You really do. Why they're not doing it, I don't know. I don't get it.
Government thinking, man. They don't come from a freight background, so they're trying to combat it in the ways that they know how. But they don't talk to enough freight people to understand these are the areas you should be targeting because you're going to have a way better hit rate success going after these hot spots rather than just a shotgun approach all over the map.
True.
I think at least with Administrator Bars, we're seeing a more focus and more of an attempt at trying to get something done. One of the things that I've been saying for a while is we need to be able to actually assess fines, and FMCSA needs to get that ability back. Because if you're going to go after bad actors or people behaving badly, going after their wallet is a great motivator for changing a behavior. So
I disagree. They just won't pay the fines. They just won't pay the fines.
They just won't pay the fines. Just keep on rolling anyway.
Yep. Until you have a guy with a gun and a badge kicking that door down and putting people in handcuffs, none of this stuff gets fixed. And if they have a bunch of fines racked up, oh well, they shut that company down and they open up a new one.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to blackpill too much on here, but I mean that's just the pattern that we see.
No, and you're absolutely right about that. If there's any way to get around it, they certainly will do everything they can, and we see it every day. We see that behavior every day, and it's just mind-boggling how to stop it.
Issuing them fines does nothing because they're not going to pay the fines. You have to hit them where they're making their money. If you can deactivate their authority or get their insurance shut down, no one's going to book freight with them. And so that's how you go after them. If I was the federal government and I'm putting out fines and violations every single day of every carrier that gets an ELP violation, the insurer of that company is on the inspection report. That insurance company should be getting an email from the federal government saying, hey, a carrier that you're insuring was just hit with an ELP violation. You should probably take a closer look at these guys. And I don't think that's happening, but I think somehow the insurance companies are eventually getting word that these guys are getting an ELP violation. Because, well, what I like to do is I'll go through the database, save every company that gets an ELP violation, and then just go back to them once a month. And you can see, you go on GenLogs and you see their trucks. It's just all over the map over the last year. And then boom, they get an ELP violation. All of a sudden, they just fall off the map. And what they've done is they've shut that authority down and they try to reopen under a new one. And the challenge is finding that new authority and linking it back to that previous carrier.
Well, the other thing too is, when they're selling the MCs on the black market, and with the MCS 150, the original authority who owns that MC, before he thinks or she thinks about selling that MC number, they really shouldn't. They should go back to the FMC and say, I've got a guy that wants to buy this, fold the authority and start a new one up, to your point, instead of, deactivate it so that they can't roll with that MC number because it's unauthorized. But they don't do that.
Those
$1,000 or $100,000, a lot of them's going to take it.
Exactly. Those MC. It's like the medallion system for New York taxis all over again. They're just way too valuable right now. Everybody that came into the freight market during the COVID capacity crunch, if you bought a truck and hauled a couple Amazon loads and then just kind of shuttered business and never did anything with it, you've got a golden ticket, my friend. I probably shouldn't be saying this publicly, but or if you're probably getting hounded by bad carriers that want your MC day after day after day. I hear that all the time from guys of like, yeah, I had a trucking company for 6 months, I shut it down, and now I'm just getting hounded relentlessly from people saying, hey, I want to buy it from you. And fortunately, they're not stupid. They know what's happening, but it's not illegal to sell your MC number to another carrier, but you're supposed to sell everything. Your truck, your operations, the land your truck is on, everything. It is illegal to sell your company to or your authority to another carrier whose authority was shut down, and then they reincarnate themselves under your authority. So why that isn't gone after more, I don't know. You can just go on Facebook and search MCs for sale, and you find group after group after group, and a lot of these groups, they're not stupid. They know people are watching, so they go from public to private, or they go to an app that they've developed. And I shouldn't say they're not stupid. They're actually really stupid at this. A lot of them have vibe coded their own websites to create a market to buy, sell, and trade MCs. And because they vibe coded all this stuff, they have no backdoor security. So anyone can go in and get an entire list of every single MC that's been bought by these guys. So if I'm Highway or Freight Validate or any other freight carrier vetting platform out there, you need somebody who is savvy with social media to be going onto every single one of these groups and documenting every single one of these carriers and blacklisting them immediately. Because if they can't make any money buying, selling, and trading these things, that problem goes away.
Dead in the water.
Yep. You have to be proactive, not reactive.
And we can cycle back to the military discussion the same way, because let's face it, the same issues that the military is dealing with are the same issues that we're dealing with on the civilian side. You have chameleon carriers running around. You have the carriers who are authorized at DOD getting their own brokerages and then brokering that freight out, thinking that, oh, I'm just adding capacity and I'm trying to do a good thing for the government. Wrong. If these guys sitting on the dock at the traffic management offices would actually stop and read the BOL as they're loading the truck, I think they'll very quickly see that they're loading the wrong guy.
Or take a photo of the truck, run the MC and DOT number through search carriers, and look at the address of where these carriers are based out of. There's absolutely no reason you need to be putting a Lockheed Martin prototype tank onto a carrier whose office is based out of a physical therapy building in Chicago.
Exactly. And, I mean, that's what we did. The thing is a lack of work instructions and process improvement plans, SOPs on the warehouse side, where the dock supervisor, his job, that's how I had my dock supervisor. Every carrier that came in walked out, looked at the truck to make sure it was roadworthy. Number one, walked in, make sure there's no holes or whatever. Just looking at the things that your eyes could pick up, and talk to the carrier and stuff. After it's loaded, the driver would stand in back of the trailer, holding the bill of lading. We would take a picture of him with the trailer number and then the product, the way that it was packed, and then we would send that directly right to the receiver. And I mean, that's just a stop. And never had a load lifted, I mean,
CYA, man, everything's CYA.
Yeah, and it didn't take long, and back in the day we did it with fax machines, but we did it because we knew it was right, and now you've got all this technology that's going to speed up everything. Why wouldn't you want to take those extra steps? Take a picture of the seal, do the snap test and make sure that it's on correctly. Look at the hinges and make sure that the bolt heads are on the outside, the nuts. I mean, just all this kind of stuff that you learn from working in a warehouse, and the stuff that you see that other people don't see out there. that's just like an aha moment. It's just like something doesn't look right here, and those extra steps, if it takes you 5 or 7 minutes to do those extra steps, that's going to stop a claim of $1 million that you might get paid pennies on the dollar for. That's money in the bank. That's what I call hidden bank opportunities. And that's what we try to do. Even like my business, we try to educate the shipper on the right things to do to protect their product, their livelihoods of the people that work with them, their brand, their image, and their reputation.
I think what they need to start doing on the DOW side is, so my experience as a driver, and again, this was 10, 15 years ago, so I don't know if these same processes are still in place, but some places I'd go to, like Crane, Indiana, my God, there was a guy in the office there. His name was Denny, and he had every pickup and every drop off, you're supposed to get inspected. And this guy had it down to a science. He would come out of the office. You park your truck in the back row, and he would come out of the office, and he would have like this little stubby metal bat, and that's what he used to thump your tires. He would come out the office, make eye contact with you, and he's already just doing hand signals to you. Turn your signal on this way, honk your horn. So by the time he's even reached the truck, he's already checked 7 different things on the truck. Thumps your tires, walks to the back of the trailer. He would inspect the bolts on the doors of the trailer to make sure that they were welded on. Because a lot of these guys, what they'll do is even if there's a hard bolt seal on the door of the trailer, they get to a warehouse, they'll just take the screws off the trailer door and pop the whole thing off. So that's all. That's all. A lot of stuff ends up on the rail. Actually, on the commercial side, is
like the warlock.
You hire some strong solo surrogate to move slot machines for you, and it's supposed to be exclusive use for that one trailer. But he's got 8 loads, and he can consolidate because they're only one pallet. He'll consolidate all loads onto one trailer, put that trailer on the rail, call you up and say, "Oh, my driver, he got a flat tire, so we're going to be a day late." Like all the time.
Yeah, we made it difficult for thieves to take our trailers. We had the 5th wheel lock on there. We had airline locks on it. We did all that kind of stuff to make it very difficult for them. I mean, who in their right mind is going to cut an airline, and try to move it? So we put it's like the OSHA stuff, the lock in, lock out, but we put locks on them so they couldn't, on the glad handles, they couldn't hook up on it, or a 5th wheel lock. It's just you got to keep safety and minimize the criminality that is around there, especially if you're in a bad area, like you said, at nighttime and stuff like that, where you've got all carriers that are driving around early morning just looking for opportunities. You've got to minimize those opportunities, and it doesn't cost much to do that.
No, and I think that level that level of inspection that was required upon us for AA&E freight, I think that needs to be expanded all across the rest of DOW at the moment, because there's just so much happening right now, and not enough people are paying attention to the trucks. That guys who should not be anywhere near base are getting on and getting their hands on freight that really shouldn't be in the wrong hands.
Right. And I would think that, and I'd never moved government stuff, but I would think that escorts would be part of that, depending upon what's in that box that you're moving, especially ammo and artillery or whatever it might be that's in there that is deadly. Sometimes they don't want you to stop, and they want you to have both of your tanks filled. You can't stop within 250 miles. You don't take the same route. Escorts in front of you and back of you, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we never had to do escorts. I think part of the reason why they wouldn't do that is there's just too many shipments being moved, so they don't have the manpower, the resources to do that. Plus, if you're going from Washington State to Virginia, those poor guys that are escorting you are going to have to stop along with you too.
Yeah, no, it's true. But even on the high risk, high value, we never sent the trailer down the same route. We always, mixed it up. So in case surveillance was happening by a criminal that they were looking, they're always taking I-40 or whatever. Nope, they took it a different route. It takes a little bit more time, but when you move $1 million loads, that's what you have to do to protect yourself.
Yeah, back in my day, it was more, and we saw this with the post office too. It's not so much. I don't know how much I should be saying here.
Don't say
it. It would be easy to mess with one of these types of loads, but the consequences that you face. So if you go to a post office, you go around the back to where the trucks come in and they're loading and stuff. On every single loading dock door of a post office, there's this gigantic sign from the postal inspectors that lists all of what's going to happen to you if you try to mess with the mail or mess with a letter carrier, and like how long you are just going to be spending the rest of your life in jail. And that deterrent has more or less worked over the years. You don't really hear about, letter carriers getting, maybe somebody gets into a fight with one if they're like, on a bad route somewhere here and there, but you're not really seeing people stealing, loads of mail left and right. And it's because anyone who has that idea, as soon as you get to a post office and you see, this is what we're going to do to you if you're stupid enough to continue this mission. It's the same with DoD freight. All the trucks have a panic button, so if, God forbid, there was a situation, I hit a button, and within 3 seconds, my phone is ringing from Scott Air Force Base. Might not save my life at the moment, but at least somebody on the good guy's side is going to know something's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've come to the top of the hour, so we need to go ahead and start wrapping stuff up. Justin, any plugs, messages, etc. that you want to get out?
You can always follow me on Twitter at SuperTrucker. I made the name as a joke a long time ago. And unfortunately, when I worked at FreightWaves, they took it in earnest. They always introduced me on air as Justin SuperTrucker Martin. And I'm like, stop calling me that. It means I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about.
SuperTrucker. I love it.
But yeah, I'm hoping to continue having more conversations with people in the administration and trying to get more stuff done. This horrific wreck in Indiana that just happened on Tuesday. Sean Duffy responded to our posts back in December when we were looking at this carrier. So they were on FMCSA's radar, and we know for a fact that ICE had paid them a visit a couple weeks ago. They were trying to find some of their drivers. So these guys should have been nuked on the spot months ago. They knew about this stuff.
Always seems like it takes a tragedy before we get action in getting something done.
Unfortunately.
I always say people have a mindset of, it's never going to happen to me. But when that catastrophic event happens, how fast the mind changes from a reactive one to a proactive one, it's totally amazing. It's totally amazing.
Yep.
But that's a trigger mechanism. I tell people you always have to be proactive, not have a reactive one, because that's what's going to kick you in the ass really, really hard. Really hard.
And that's what I'm trying to get across to the federal government right now is we have the tools, means, technology, and the people that know the industry inside and out to be proactive with this stuff. I'm not saying that fatal wrecks are never going to happen across the U.S., but when it comes to a driver who should have never been behind the wheel in the first place, we can absolutely prevent those accidents from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Justin, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Jeff, you got any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I appreciate you, Justin, coming and joining us for the last hour. It was very interesting. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope that you come to the Freight Fraud Summit since you're right around the corner from there on May 21st. We're going to, like I said, we've got all different types of logisticians and enforcement agencies and brokers and carriers and NVOCCs, you name it. They're going to be there, and we need more people like you, Justin. That's going to be out there and fighting a good fight to put these bad guys behind bars or just getting the hell off the road. So I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
No problem. Trying to fix what I can.
So, folks, next week we are going to have Steve Vest on the show. I will actually be traveling, so I'll be in my remote studio for that one. We're going to be talking about the R&R Express saga. This is going to be a fun one. I imagine we're going to hear a lot of comments coming through during that show. JR, sorry, I did not post a bunch of your comments. I apologize. We were tight in the discussion. I'll be better about that in the future, but thank you so much for following.
And I wasn't even looking at the
Yeah, I mean,
that was part of my problem. I didn't have that screen up, and I'm kicking myself, so I feel really bad about that, Jar. Okay, but anywho, folks, can't wait to see you guys next week. Please be sure to grab the check off the table and leave a tip for your server, and we will see you next time on the Tic Doc Diner.